everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of The Best You, a coaching podcast. It's Gary here again, and thank you very, very much for joining me. I hope you're doing great and investing in whatever work you've committed to get closer to being the best you. So firstly, I would like to wish everyone a very happy new year. I actually forgot to say that on my first email to my distribution list, or my community I guess I should say, last week, and that's a big whoops, and I'll confirm that again on the email accompanying this podcast as well. I hope whatever you did, wherever you did it, with whomever you did it with, you had a brilliant time over the festive period and you managed to make the most of whatever downtime that might have presented itself for you. I certainly did. I had time with my son Leo, and we had kind of longer sleeps than normal, spent some quality time basically completely zoning out, honestly, and watching some movies and just hanging out together. It was a great time. The weather during the break here was unseasonably warm, so we also got some outside time just to kind of have a bit of fun with that as well. But that was basically mostly me going outside and running, and him staying inside and scrolling through his phone while I was gone. I'm on to you, Leo, I'm on to you. But all in all, it was an absolutely brilliant time, capped off with us ringing in the New Year bells at 5 p.m. Calgary time to celebrate the British New Year. We celebrate the British New Year over here in Canada, and that gives us an opportunity to get out in the afternoon, connect with old and some new friends, toast 2023 and ring in 2024, all by 5 p.m. So that's a great time, and then we get on with the rest of our night. And also some of us try our best to ring in the Canadian New Year at midnight, but that's kind of 7 hours later. Sometimes that's a bit of a stretch. So here we are on the first pod of the new year, and I'm going to start with a commitment to you. You will have in 2024 and beyond 2 pods per month and 2 blogs per month on alternating weeks. I was very sporadic about that in 2023 as I went through some change and some quite significant drains on my time during the year. But in my new life, one of the main reasons I decided to go all in with the coaching and self-education offerings was to be able to get a bit more serious about my content creation and distribution as well. And I think I've mentioned before, if I haven't already, that podcasting is something that I've been doing now. I'm in my, I guess, 4th calendar year of podcasting, with about 160 odd episodes on the Rangers front, on the team that I support from back home in Scotland. So I am here for the long haul. I know what it takes to be committed and to deliver content when I intend to deliver it, and I intend to do that, and I truly hope that you'll come along with me as we grow together. So in this episode, we're going to work through a quick review of the recent blog that was published on the website garygillen.com, that's centred on work ethic and exploring whether it can be taught or not. And before all that, after that, I'll go on to a book review of How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and that book is from 1936. And as I was going through my notes in preparation for recording today, there is a lot of information in that. I think if you're a regular listener to the pod, you'll remember that I've been reading this book for quite some time, and it took me a while to get through it, not because it was a difficult read or anything, just what it's like, it drains on time trying to figure out the best routine as to when to be alert enough to read it, absorb it, highlight the areas that I think are worth mentioning, and move on from there. So I'll get through that as quickly as I can, but before all that, I'll go through what I've been up to, and since we last chatted on the podcast here as well. So like before, I have been continuing with my core passion, my whole reason for switching careers, and that's my one-on-one coaching. I did mention on the last pod that I came to a natural conclusion. Is it kind of natural when it just kind of comes to an end at the end of the calendar year? I don't know, let's just say that anyway. And with some clients in this past December, and I'm already getting a wee bit of withdrawal symptoms from not seeing them, I don't mind admitting. I have continued my mentoring conversations with colleagues and associates from the business community to basically pick their brains and share information and ideas between ourselves as to what we're doing, how we could maybe do things a little bit differently to reap different rewards and such. Continuing with my weekly journal that I did mention before, I did take a break over the festive period, an intentional break over the festive period, so that there are 2 weeks that are missing, but I did get into it last week and enjoyed just kind of summarising the previous 2 weeks as well. And I am continuing to progress through the training for the Project Management Institute's authorised training partner initiative through Mount Royal University. I mentioned before that I should have been finished that, and it will be finished this week. I have it scheduled in now, and we'll get organised. And then if we're connected on LinkedIn, you'll hopefully see a shiny badge that gets put on my profile after I successfully navigate the exam and get the accreditation. So hopefully that will be in the next week or so that all that admin gets organised as well. I did finalise the 30-day video challenge that I'm doing on the mastermind community, and I'm now using that as collateral to get a wee bit more exposure on LinkedIn as well. I just started this past week there, and you'll get to kind of see me in action, so to speak. It's my first real foray into video production or video content production, and I quite enjoyed it, and getting some decent traction there. And it's nice just to do something a wee bit different than stagnant word posts, which is typically what I do. So that's been kind of fun. I am prepping for an immersive workshop in the mastermind community, which comes up this weekend, and the workshop is called Getting the Yes. So it's taking your content and then just kind of manifesting it into something that clients would, or potential clients would be interested in buying. And doing the odd seminar and such on interesting topics, kind of mostly driven from LinkedIn as well. That's my kind of go-to social media community there. And finally, I am back in the classroom. It's been quite some time, probably about almost a year and a half since I've formally taught anything in the classroom, and I'm now back. I've started a virtual course called Introduction to Project Management, and I'm doing that through Mount Royal University as well. So we're on week 1 of 4 right now, and we had our first weekly office hours session last night, and it was terrific. It was great just to talk about project management, to hear where people are at in their journey, what their inspiration for getting started in the journey is and it's been fantastic. Really enjoying being back in the classroom again, something I want to do a wee bit more of as well. In terms of books that I have on the go for right now, on more the business front, I've started reading Coaching for Performance by Sir John Whitmore. I'm at the very early stages of that, and it looks like it's going to be a fairly quick read, and I think it's more kind of practical, this is how you would coach for performance rather than the theory behind it. So hopefully get a wee bit of information from that. And on the kind of more personal front, I'm reading Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, which is a bit of an amalgam of decades of journaling that he's done as well. Very entertaining and very well written as well. One of those books that I don't want to put it down when I start it, which is good. It's good and bad, because sometimes it can be a bit of a drain on my time as well. And continuing to sample the Blinks and the Blinkist app as well, that gives a wee bit of an abbreviation of certain books that are out there as well. So yeah, keeping very busy actually on my own self-development and my support of my clients and my community as well. So yeah, onto the actual content for this time, and just to extend the information that was included in blog number 9, which you can find on the website, which is Work Ethic, Can It Be Taught? And really where it came about was, I'm observing everything that I experience at times, and just observation of things around me, of people around me, of processes, of organisations, of the traffic, of anything basically. I'm just a bit of a sea sponge when it comes to things like that, and I was focusing on my son, on Leo, and kind of he's a terrific student. He does really well at school. He's very self-motivated. He's quite competitive in terms of his marks and such. And then in comparison with other kids that he talks about, his friends, his classmates and things like that. And it just got me to thinking, where did he get that from? Did he get that from me? I would love to say yes, from me and his mum, of course, is what I mean by that. I'd love to say yes, but I'm not 100% sure if that's how it works or not. And then I ended up including this topic on one of the 30-day challenge videos that I mentioned a wee while back there, and it was video number 13 when we get there. So if you keep an eye on LinkedIn, when it gets to day 13, you can listen to that part as well. And really, where we started on the blog was like just a question, posing a question of what comes to mind when someone is described to you as having a strong or a positive work ethic, and just challenging you to truly consider that and think about what it means to you. Is it common? Is it universal? Is it circumstantial? Does it depend? And that's the questions that was kind of like the inspiration to get a little bit deeper into this topic and kind of try and explore some ideas and understand, my own thoughts on that. We started then with looking at what is work ethic. In broad terms, it refers to your core values, your attitudes and your behaviours that drives your approach to your work. And all these things combined helps establish and maintain your commitment to achieving your goals. A strong work ethic is often associated with high levels of productivity, reliability and achievement, and probably enjoyment. And then the opposite could be true if you have a weak, inconsistent or non-existent work ethic. That would drain your enjoyment and probably make things a little bit more onerous and maybe dreaded to do as well. So basically, work ethic is the consistent effort and dedication to put tasks, even when your motivation wanes, and or natural talent is or is not present. Having the motivation and natural talent is obviously going to absolutely positively contribute to your work ethic. But if one or both of those are absent, it doesn't magically mean that there will be a negative impact on your work ethic. But I think there will be impacts into the outputs, there will be impacts into the effort, there will be impacts into the overall enjoyment as well. I also talked about the normalcy around having different approaches to work ethic in different parts of your life, and that you might be a powerhouse, for example, in the workplace, and a little bit more relaxed, or maybe can I say lazy? I don't know if that's the right word to use, but maybe a bit more relaxed at home. Or you might be very much all over garden work or yard work, but despise or do a poor job or avoid altogether domestic duties inside the home. And I wonder, why do you think that is? And how does that reflect on you as you navigate through life? Would you be comfortable with that? In fact, were you even aware of the different types and styles of work ethic that you have, depending on what part of your life that you're considering until this point, until we're talking about that? Food for thought. So where does it come from? It comes from your genes. Yes, a wee bit of science in there again, but your genetics may contribute, and most likely do, to your work ethic traits and your behaviours. Your childhood, how you were raised, by whom, the rules that were imposed upon you, the consistency of life, the culture, the communication norms that we had will have an influence on your work ethic as you grow and navigate through life, and most certainly in your formative years, for sure, as you're under a wee bit more restrictions, as you kind of, if I could say, play by other people's rules. And I think it's likely fair to say at least some of those will have accompanied you into adulthood. So in the blog we talk about how the parent or guardian will use modelling, hopefully of good behaviour, to influence the children to inspire and contribute and their work ethic, or contribute to their work ethic, and whatever chores or responsibilities you were given as a child in contribution to the family will also influence your work ethic. And we all likely, I know certainly I did, had the chores that we liked to do, the chores that we thought were okay, and the chores that we just did not like at all. And then think about how you reacted when you were faced with these. Some was with enthusiasm and gusto and a bit of a can-do attitude, or some were kind of something different. And it used to be that if I had something to do that I just did not like, that the intent was to do as poor a job as I possibly could so that I wouldn't be asked again. And sometimes the strategy didn't always work, by the way. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And then we did discuss finally in that particular section the use of setting expectations and clearly communicating values in the home, and the influence that these will have inevitably have had in your, as I say, your formative years and leading into adulthood as well. And I'll just give you an example from my life. When I was younger, as long as I can remember, way back in the day, in my house growing up with my parents, more so with my dad, to be honest, it was don't tell lies, just tell the truth, and that was instilled in us. And I don't literally remember him saying that as a kid, that it was indelibly inked inside my brain. But it was just the way that we lived. It was just don't you dare tell a lie. You tell the truth. And through the years, as my dad and I evolved from him being my superior, if you like, to then being my compadre, then being my best friend in his latter years of his life. We embellished that a wee bit, and then kind of said, like, always tell the truth. It's easier to remember. Nothing bad will come from telling the truth. And that's something certainly I've tried to do my best to instill in Leo as well. I just don't have any time for lies at all. And then we talked about location. Where you grew up, the country, the area, the city, the town, the street within the city or town, where you lived, then where you live now and where you spend your time, out with the home as well, is going to contribute to influencing your work ethic as well. Then community, like who is in your circle, who needs to be in your circle, and who do you choose to be in your circle is essentially what I was getting at there in the blog. And at various points of the year, various experts, and I maybe say experts in inverted commas, recommend conducting an audit of your inner circle, those who are closest to you, to make sure that they are energy givers, they're not energy takers, they're energy sappers, and that the relationship is mutually healthy. And if it isn't, then you have some data to be able to make a decision. You are who you spend your time with. So I'd encourage you to think carefully about that as well. And then personal experiences have a play in there as well. Everything that's happened basically to you to get you to this point, this very moment as you're listening to and absorbing these words, will have an effect on who you are, how you approach life, and appropriate to the topic, how you approach your work. And this doesn't mean that a bad experience automatically translates into a bad work ethic. And as I discussed in the blog, it's about using all of the data from all of your experiences, discarding that which doesn't serve you, and then using what does serve you for the good of you and your community as well. And then we moved on to discussing the role of education in shaping work ethic. And back in the day, in my school years back in Scotland, my dad used to always say, the best days of your life, son, the best days of your life. And at the time I was like, no, like, I don't want to get up early. I don't want to have to walk in the rain 100 miles uphill both ways, which is the story that I tell Leo. To do that, I didn't believe it. And latterly I see why he was saying that, in terms of responsibility, in terms of what my job was just to go and get as educated as possible, and not to be a disruptive influence in the classroom. I managed that most of the time, and then just basically set myself up for success in the work environment. And this section was really where we started to explore key facets of things that wouldn't be out of place on curriculum, such as the art of learning, learning how to learn in and of itself. And there are many different types and styles of learning, of course, which ultimately involve a level of work for the learner. Dig in, apply yourself, ask good questions, put in your best effort, and you'll be rewarded accordingly, hopefully, or something like that. And if you don't do any of those things, then you won't be rewarded as to the level that you're hoping. And that's quite the influence in and of itself. As I mentioned, learning how to learn when, what your preferred style is, deadlines, the quality of the submissions, what you're learning. Are you actually memorizing and regurgitating, which is kind of standard practice, or are there key skills that you're actually learning and developing through your ongoing learning? All of this is most certainly, absolutely contributory to your work ethic and how you approach your work and your level of fulfillment and enjoyment through the journey, and most likely your outcomes. Not every outcome is going to work out exactly as you hoped, but there's a better chance if you have a more consistent and stringent work ethic attached to that. Then we then touched on role models next, and discussed who they are, where they come from, and the impacts that they will have on our lives, with the acknowledgement that throughout our lives that we are going to be influenced and inspired by different types and styles of people, and they can come from any facet of your life. And here's the thing that I didn't say in the blog: they don't have to be a role model for you in every way, shape or form, like their entire being. There could just be a certain trait or a certain demeanour, for example, their work ethic, of course, and the theme of the blog, that you admire, that you aspire to, and while acknowledging their flaws, and I'll say flaws like in your opinion, their flaws in other areas, you don't have to be fooled into thinking that a role model has to be the full and complete package, is basically what I'm saying there. And as I'd mentioned, you have the ability to identify and learn from your role models through ongoing observation and any mentorship that they are willing or do provide to you. There isn't an exact science to this, I don't think, and be prepared that at some point you'll highlight someone as being a role model potentially after they've left your life. And so then I say that's just to kind of highlight that if you're not careful or you're not paying attention in the moment, it won't be until they're no longer readily accessible that you'll start to realise and appreciate the profound effect that they had on you, and it could be positive or negative, but we'll go for the positive at all times on this pod. So I encourage you to try and not let this happen if you can. And, like a bit of a challenge of sorts that I laid out in the blog was for you to consider role models that you've had in your life, and then to kind of go deeper on that and consider why you would consider them role models in the first place. And we then rounded on whether work ethic can indeed be taught, and my conclusion in the blog was yes, it can, and the rationale for that was being intentional in areas of support and encouragement, basically creating an environment that's conducive for positive work ethic. And if you know that work ethic is valued, it's important and a key element to the success of your environment, then that's a head start as you move in, to your life, as so to speak. And traits such as organisations who foster growth, who celebrate achievement and effort, who have an environment of providing positive feedback, who look upon every circumstance, good and not so good, as opportunities for growth, celebrating effort, perseverance, and of course lauding a strong work ethic is key to try and attract yourself to organisations that have those traits. So how do we do that? It isn't by fluke, and it's most certainly intentional, and can be born of strategies embedded within the fabric of the organisation. So such as creating time for self-reflection, reframing any form of negativity, being constantly curious, constantly I should say, actually, again, seeking feedback and celebrating a positive mindset. That's the type and style of organisation I want to be part of, or associated with, or working for or with. I then went on to discuss adoption of these in the workplace, and kind of repeated some of them in more businessy speak in the blog, and then focused on others, such as defining what work ethic means to that organisation, recognising and rewarding positive work ethic, the role of leadership in promoting a strong work ethic, leading by example, incorporation of professional development supports for continuous improvement, and the importance of a positive and motivating workplace as well. And then went on to explore the impact of motivation, discussing both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and the key role that each play in providing focus, energy, determination and consistency when working towards goal achievement. And we did touch on goal setting a little bit in there to help with the motivation as well. And one area that was really key for me was discipline, and the art and science of self-control, of consistency, working hard to regularly prioritise your own time, the tasks you're working on, the energy and your efforts accordingly. And this This might be a pod all on its own, quite honestly, at some point in the future, the topic of discipline. And we also had a wee bit of my old career in there with some reference to time management techniques such as prioritising tasks, creating schedules, and utilising any productivity tools that you might have access to as well. And just a wee bit of an anecdote, I guess, at this point. It wasn't included in the blog, but recently I was doing some reading on or studying, I should say, on procrastination. And one expert had said there's no such thing as procrastination. You just didn't schedule the work and then you just didn't follow through on it. So procrastination in and of itself was a thing that was kind of debunked by this particular person that I was listening to, by the fact that if you schedule it and then you follow through on it, procrastination just does not become a thing. So the art is in the scheduling, and then latterly, of course, the following through as well. Anyway, back to the blog. We finished off by talking through the need to have focus and drive to be resilient if and when things didn't go our way. And if you're sure of what you're doing and the direction you're going in, truly persevering towards your intended goals. And this is so key, and in my opinion separates the average to the good to the great, and the great to the exceptional people and organisations that you would likely encounter in your life. And this led to the absolute requirement to be cognizant of and prepared to face the inevitable drains on our concentration with the plethora of distractions that surround us daily. We don't need to look very hard for distractions in our life at all, and it's how to kind of recognise and address and combat those as we go forward is the science of making progress. And then the blog concluded by stating that work ethic is most definitely not a one-size-fits-all, and what works for some person might not necessarily work for another person and might not be the right approach for you. So that means that you don't have to live a life of constant comparison and constantly wondering whether what you're doing is right or wrong. You know, you can try something. You can course correct where you feel the need, and surround yourself with people who do it better than you, and you'll be in great shape going forward. And I finished it for the first time, and I'm going to do this on each blog as we go forward with what I'm calling the GAZ challenge, to help you gain further insight into your work ethic by basically challenging you to look closer at areas of your life where you think your work ethic is positive, it's good, it serves you, it serves your community, versus areas that's maybe not so good, areas that you would like to improve. And then just challenge you to really sit down and think, and please do this, folks. Why do you think that is? And then here's the key: write it down and see what pops out the page at you, whether it's an electronic page or a physical page. And then you have data, you have information to figure out what you want to do going forward. Now, on to the book report. This is going to be a wee bit of a longer one this time. What I think I'll do here is I'll go through the list fairly quickly of what I encountered within How to Win Friends and Influence People. And this, as I mentioned earlier here, this is back from 1936. And when you get to social science, human behaviour, leadership type books, you'll see a lot of quotes from way back in the early 20th century and beyond that, or further back than that, I should say, because people are people, and there are certain ways to do things and there are certain ways not to do things to get yourself ahead as well. So I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. It's a classic. It was on my list of things to read for some time, and it's broken into 4 parts. And the first part is fundamental techniques in handling people. The second part is 6 ways to make people like you. Part 3, how to win people to your way of thinking. And part 4, be a leader, how to change people without giving offence or arousing resentment. And in part 1 of the fundamental techniques in handling people, that there are 3 principles in there. And the first one is don't criticise, condemn or complain. If you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. And there's a lot of information in within that, but the key theme of this is criticism is futile. because it puts a person on the defensive and usually makes him strive to justify himself. And there was a quote included within the book from Abraham Lincoln saying, "Don't criticise them, they are just what we would be under similar circumstances." I love that. Principle 2, give honest and sincere appreciation, which is the big secret of dealing with people. One of the most neglected virtues of our daily existence is appreciation. Food for thought there. Principle 3, arouse in the other person an eager want. He who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. And there's a quote in there from Henry Ford: if there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own. Yeah, I really like that stuff as well. Part 2, 6 ways to make people like you. Principle 1, there are 6 principles here. Principle 1, become genuinely interested in other people. Do this and you'll be welcome anywhere. And there was a quote there from Alfred Adler, who's a psychologist. It is the individual who is not interested in his fellow men who has the greatest difficulties in life and provides the greatest injury to others. Principle 2, smile. A simple way to make a good first impression. You must have a good time meeting people if you expect them to have a good time meeting you. Isn't that the truth? I love that. Principle 3, remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. And if you don't do this, you're headed for trouble. Dale Carnegie says the average person is more interested in his or her own name than in all other names on earth put together. And that's true. If I do any shout outs on any of the podcasts that I do, people get excited by that. I get excited by that if people shout out my name as well, whether it's in public or private. So yeah, food for thought on that one. Principle 4, be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves, and that's an easy way to become a good conversationalist. And one of the key parts of this was to be interesting is to be interested. Be interested first and you become interesting to other people. Principle 5, talk in terms of the other person's interests. And it's kind of like a little bit of a play on the good listener part, but it's how to interest people basically by being more interested in them and talking about them than talking about yourself. Principle 6, make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. And this is one of the all-important laws of human conduct. Always make the other person feel important, and that's typically by talking about them. Then we go to part 3, which is how to win people to your way of thinking. 12 principles here. And principle 1 is the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. You cannot win an argument. And there was a quote from Ben Franklin: if you argue and rankle and contradict, you may achieve a victory of something, but it will be an empty victory because you'll never get your opponent's goodwill. So the impacts and influences from an argument. Principle 2, show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say you're wrong, which is a surefire way of making enemies. And it's difficult under even the most benign conditions to change people's minds. So thinking about that in terms of trying to prove a position or trying to convince someone of something, very, very difficult to change someone's mind. Principle 3, if you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. And if if you're wrong, just basically admit it. There are certain degrees of satisfaction in having the courage to admit one's errors. It not only clears the air of guilt and defensiveness, but often helps solve problems created by the error in and of itself. Principle 4, begin in a friendly way. Gentleness and friendliness were always stronger than fury and force. I really like that too. Principle 5, get the other person saying yes, yes immediately. And this is the secret of Socrates in this particular section. In talking with people, don't begin by discussing the things on which you differ. Begin by emphasising the things on which you agree. Principle 6, let the other person do a great deal of the talking, which is the safety valve in handling complaints. Listen patiently and with an open mind. Be sincere about your listening and encourage them to express their ideas fully. Principle 7, let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. And this is the art of how to get cooperation. And don't you have much more faith in ideas that you discover than in ideas that are handed to you on a silver platter? If so, isn't it bad judgment to try to ram your opinions down the throats of other people, is the question that Dale Carnegie poses. Principle 8, try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. And it's a formula that will work wonders for you. And there is a reason why the other man thinks and acts as he does. Try honestly to put yourself in his place. See things from his angle. Principle 9, be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. And there was a quote here saying, I don't blame you one iota for feeling as you do. If I were you, I would undoubtedly feel just as you do as well. Just basically being more expansive in your thinking there. Principle 10, appeal to the nobler motives, an appeal that everybody likes. Principle 11, dramatise your ideas. The movies do it, TV does it, why don't you do it? And that kind of starts to lend itself into storytelling and such. Principle 12, throw down a challenge, and then it suggests when nothing else works, try this. The one major factor that motivated people was the work itself. If the work is exciting and interesting, the worker will look forward to doing it and was motivated to do a good job. So trying to find the good in the work that's happening is the key there. And then on to the fourth and final section, which is be a leader, how to change people without giving offence or arousing resentment. There are 9 principles here. And principle 1, begin with praise and honest appreciation. If you must find fault, this is the way to begin. And he goes on to basically just really emphasise the praise and the honest appreciation. And it's, a little bit possibly of a manipulation technique there, but, he goes on to explain why. Principle 2, call attention to the people's mistakes indirectly. And the key of this is how to criticise and not be hated for it. And what he says is this could be easily, our challenging circumstances could be easily overcome by changing the word but to and. And this is something that even the most forward-thinking thought leaders today say is one of the most basic things. If you're giving some feedback and then you say, you did this very well, but this is what you didn't do well, that but is such a juncture in the conversation, isn't it? So you say, you did this really well, and there were some areas that I think we could actually improve on. How different does that feel? How different does that sound even, Principle number 3, talk about your own mistakes before criticising the other person's mistakes as well. It provides a bit of a human element, and it provides a little bit more camaraderie as well. Principle 4, ask questions instead of giving direct orders. No one likes to take orders, and asking questions not only makes an order more palatable, it often stimulates the creativity of the persons whom you ask. And you can tell by some of the language here, I'm reading some of this directly as quotes from the book as well, because that's not typically the type and style of language that I would use. Principle number 5, let the other person save face. Even if we're right and the other person is absolutely definitely wrong, we only destroy ego by causing someone to lose face. And that's when our ego comes into it, as well as their ego as well. Principle number 6 is praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. And then be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. And this is how to spur people on to success. And he asks, why don't we use praise instead of condemnation? Let us praise even the slightest improvement. That inspires the other person to keep on improving. Think about how you receive praise. Think about how you receive criticism as well. What's the more inspiring of the two? I'll leave it to you to decide. Principle number 7 is give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. And he says this is like give a dog a good name, and it's basically boosting someone's ego, giving them the ability or the belief that they can do something. I believe you can do this. Of course you can reach the next level. Of course you can do this. Principle number 8, use encouragement. Make any faults that are present seem easy to correct. Telling anyone they're stupid or dumb at a certain thing, that they have no gift for it and are doing it all wrong, and you have destroyed almost every incentive for them to try to improve as well. Encouragement is absolutely key. And the 9th and final principle here is make the other person happy about doing the thing that you are suggesting. Make them glad to do what you want them to do. When you make your request, put it in a form that will convey to the other person the idea that he will personally benefit from that as well. So I know that was a very quick go through of the 4 parts of How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you haven't read it, folks, I would absolutely encourage you to read it. There's a lot of storytelling in there. He writes it very well. It's structured very differently than any business books that you would read today. There's lots and lots of text and not a lot of spacers or new headings or new sections and things like that. But the stories they tell, as I mentioned earlier, that's how we live our life today, and some of these things are absolute gold dust. There wasn't any part or principle of the, what was that, probably a couple of dozen principles overall in the book that I thought that is completely dated, that does not work, that has no right to be in a business book today. None of that. There was merit to every single point there. Some of it very, very basic, some of it a little bit more advanced and developmental as well, and like everything from a social science perspective, open to interpretation. I interpret it one way, you might interpret it another. But yeah, I hope that was okay, and that you did like a bit of an overview of How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'm delighted I got the chance to read it, and I have a lot more information to share with others as a result of that. Okay, I hope this episode of the Best You, a Coaching podcast, was a valuable use of your time, and that you'll join me for more as we move forward together. If you did find it valuable, I'd really appreciate it if you would share it with others as we continue to build our community of like-minded folks from literally around the globe to help each other continue to work towards being the absolute best that they can be. A wee bit of a longer one this time. I do try and stick to the 30 minutes or so, but we had a lot of content to cover. Don't forget to take a peek at garygillen.com for more content and information, including the prior blogs and the pods as well. And until next time, my friends, please do take care of yourself, and all the very, very best to you on your journey. I'll talk to you very soon. Cheerio for now.